Well, hello everybody. Welcome back one more time to the Past Days with Pastor Joel. Hey, I just want to say thank you to all of my subscribers. When I started this channel, really honestly didn't have a vision for it. And just quickly, because some of you know this story, I was a pastor of a church and some of the sermons I was preaching just began disappearing off of the website even while I was still there. And a friend of mine actually suggested that I put them somewhere just to archive them because he had found them really helpful. A lot of other people did too. And thus this channel was started. At the time, I didn't know what I would do with it, and then gradually began putting out different content. And to my surprise, some people were interested in it. And now we're up to 1,300 some subscribers. Sorry about my phone there. And so just super happy about that. So thank you. And if you would like to join me on my Patreon account, which I got set up recently, you can do that. Patreon.com/The Past Days with Pastor Joel. And you can see some other ways here you can support my channel if you would like to do that. So we are in this big video series called God's Story, and we're in the story of Joseph. And this is our second video on Joseph, which really begins in Genesis chapter 37 and goes through the end of Genesis. And so this particular lesson is called 50-20 Vision. And we've all thought that 2020 was the best vision, but according to Joseph, and he has something very important to teach, I think, all of us, 50-20 vision is what we want to shoot for. And I'll get to that as we move on. So one way to outline the overall story of Joseph, and you might want to go back and catch this first video to get a better idea of that, is dreamer, shepherd, slave, interpreter of dreams, first reunion, back to Canaan, back to Egypt, cup of testing, second reunion, and God's sovereign plan. How's that? And more specifically for this video, we're going to focus on two robes: the first reunion, back to Canaan, back to Egypt, the cup of testing, the second reunion, and ultimately God's sovereign plan and all of this. And it fits into that overall outline. And if you didn't remember all that, it's okay, but I'm going to kind of follow it in that way to hopefully be helpful. So two robes. All right. We actually, in a minute here, are going to have some blanks to fill in, which I like to do from time to time. But Joseph, of course, was given two robes. He was given the multicolored robe by his father, Jacob, who, remember, was renamed Israel. And then he was given a robe by Pharaoh. Which did he prefer? These are important things for us to think about, too. He was free as a Hebrew. And though he ends up having great power, he's still a slave in a foreign land. Which did he prefer? He's been given a wife, but the Hebrews have been taught not to intermarry with other nations. Which robe did he prefer? He's been given a new name, but wait. Just like God had changed the name of Abram to Abraham, he had given Jacob the new name Israel. And now, of course, Joseph comes from that and becomes one of the tribes. Well, let me go ahead and pull up these notes here. All right. Joseph, though he's been tremendously blessed by God, if you're following along, I'm filling these blanks in, he's nevertheless in the wrong place with the wrong robe, with the wrong name, and he longs for home. Now, those of you that know me, and those of you especially that embrace what I often refer to as the fulfilled view of eschatology, some prefer covenant eschatology, full preterism. I'm starting to use the term sometimes the completed gospel. I love that way of thinking of it. And we know how important audience relevance is, right? And this is the way I like to say it. When we're at a Bible study, we're with some friends, even sitting through some type of sermon or teaching at a church gathering, whatever it is. The question that commonly comes up is, what does this mean for me? And at a Bible study, people are sitting around, what does that mean to you? What does it mean to me? And that is not a bad question. It's not a wrong question, But it's not the first question. The first question is always, what does it mean? What was its relevance for that audience? How would they have understood it? And if someone was speaking or writing, what were they meaning to communicate to that audience? Them there that were there then is another way I like to say it. And we must never forget that. However, while there is only one interpretation, and that's where that original audience is so important, there can be many and varied applications that I think we can and should and must apply to our lives. And yes, it takes some discernment to do that. But let me ask you a question, because I think the life of Joseph, not only is Joseph a type of Christ, but there are so many things for all of us. Have you ever been tremendously blessed by God, but you nevertheless felt like you were in the wrong place, with the wrong robe, so to speak, with the wrong name, longing for home? I sure have. And so I just want to touch on that. But again, which robe, or we might say which worldview, which reality is more important? Because sometimes believers will say, well, if we're really following God, everything is going to work out swimmingly. We're going to have peace about all the decisions we make. And I'm sorry, I just don't see that in Scripture, and I haven't seen that in my life. Now, if we're talking about the peace that passes all understanding, yes. But this idea that when we're following God, we're just going to sort of feel good about it, like this is the right thing to do, and there's no struggle or anything, that's just whacknut as we look at the stories of Scripture. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's the opposite. When people are really trying to follow the Lord, He often gives them very little information. He can see around corners, but doesn't tell us what's on the other side. It can cause sometimes great pain. It can be an uphill battle. It can be a struggle. And we just need to face that. However, as we're going to see, Joseph shows us marvelously how to think through all of this. All right. So let me go ahead and get my big head back here on the screen again. So amazingly, like I mentioned, Joseph was tremendously blessed, but he was nevertheless in the wrong place with the wrong name, with the wrong robe, and he longed for home. How do I know this? How do we know this? Because shortly after Joseph received all of this, and he received a lot, his Egyptian wife gave him 2 sons. Genesis 41:51 says, Joseph called the name of the foreborn Manasseh, for, he said, God has made me forget all my hardships and all my father's house. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. You know what's interesting? Okay, Egyptian wife, but these are not Egyptian names for the children. They're Hebrew names. And this is how we know that Joseph still worshiped the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, and that he longs for home. At the same time, Joseph remains ever so faithful to his God. Essentially, the 2 names he gave his children say, though I had many afflictions in my true home, God has helped me to forget them. Though I now live in a foreign land with new afflictions, God has made me fruitful and prospered me here. We've all heard the phrase, grow where you're planted. It's a good thing to think about. Is this attitude of Joseph something that we can apply to our own lives? Yes. That's why I mentioned it a moment ago. It goes something like this. My past is full of afflictions, but God in his grace has helped me to forget them, to overcome them, to live, even though in the reality of them, beyond them, triumphantly over them. And my present is full of afflictions too. But God in his grace is also with me, and now he's working good in, through, and for me, for the good of his people, and for the good of a watching world. And this is just so important. I love the story of Joseph. It has just epic proportions. Well, we move now to the first reunion between Joseph and his brothers. This is Genesis 42, 1 through 5. If you want to follow along, it won't be up on the screen. 42, 1 to 5. When Jacob learned there was grain in sale for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, why do you look at one another? Remember, they're in this great famine. He said, behold, I've heard there's grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt, but Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Remember, Benjamin and Joseph were sons from the same mother, and Jacob's thinking, well, it didn't go so well for my son Joseph. He thinks he's dead still at this point. Maybe I shouldn't send Benjamin either. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Again, that's Genesis 42, 1 through 5. Jacob's sons, by the way, and we see this all through the storyline, are really not too impressive. They're not very trustworthy, and that's why he's a little bit skittish about sending Benjamin with them. And they meet Joseph, and remember, he knows who they are, but they don't know who he is. He looks, talks, and acts, and walks like an Egyptian. Sorry, I had to throw it in. Bangles, was that group? Some of you are saying I have no idea. Remember what else happens as we go on in this story. He says they are spies. He's messing with his brothers. They deny it. He says to send someone back for the youngest brother. 3 days pass, and he now says to leave one as a prisoner and the others can go back with grain. Okay, this is verse 21 of chapter 42. Then they said to each other, in truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, and that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. And they're talking about when they were going to murder him, and then they came up with this other plan to just throw him into a pit and leave him for dead, and then they sat down and had lunch together. Crazy. Okay? They believe they're being punished because of their sins. What goes around comes around, so to speak. That's what they are thinking, and what is our brother going to do with us? Or what is, at that point, they don't know he's their brother yet. And so just to bring this up, so you can see this, first reunion. Oh, there we go. Now, Jacob feared that harm might happen to him. The brothers do not know Joseph, but he knows them. We're going to move back to Canaan. Remember, Joseph puts money in their sacks. One of them discovers this, and they say, what is this? Notice that God has done to us. They're beginning to see God's hand in this, and again, they're going to be punished for their earlier sins. They get home to Jacob, and they explain this, realizing now that all of them have had their money returned to them. Verse 36 says, and Jacob, their father, said to them, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, because Simeon has been asked to stay back in Egypt. And now you would take Benjamin? All this has come against me. Okay, and we move here back to Canaan. Joseph puts money in their sacks. One of them says, what is this that God has done to us? So this story gets so very interesting, doesn't it? And Joseph's given them these terms that they need to go back and they need to return with their brother in order for him to release Simeon. Okay? Now Reuben has another great idea. He ends up saying, kill my 2 sons if I don't bring him back to you. Let's go on to Genesis 43, 8 and 9 in this incredible story. Judah, keep Judah in mind here. Judah said to Israel, his father, remember Jacob has been renamed Israel, send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge of his safety. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. Wait a minute. Hold the phone. Time out. Remember who it was way back in Genesis 38 that wanted to kill Joseph and then sold him? Judah. Judah is a changed man. And remember, ultimately, Jesus is the lion from the tribe of Judah. So they go back to Egypt. They take gifts, they double the money, and they include the money that he has put in their sacks from their first trip. They see Joseph and they are afraid, and he will meet them later. Remember, they still don't know who he is at this point. They speak to Joseph's assistant, who reassures them. He says, things are going to be okay, even saying, your God and the God of your father has put the treasure in your sacks for you. Simeon is brought back to them. Joseph asks again about their father, and then he asks about Benjamin. They all end up bowing down before Joseph. Remember that little dream that Joseph had? Yeah. Joseph goes to his chamber and weeps. He weeps so loudly that everyone hears him. Joseph throws them a feast, and he sits them down in birth order, which totally trips them out because they're thinking, how in the world would he know? And then finally, he reveals who he is after he had given Benjamin five times as much to eat. Wow. So it's an amazing story. But even before, I don't want us to forget this. He then puts the cup in Benjamin's sack, and he sends his assistant to meet his brothers. The brothers say that they will all share the guilt for this cup found in Benjamin's sack. The steward says, no, only the one who stole the cup. And after it is found with Benjamin, the brothers then return to Joseph's house, and Joseph accuses. Judah says, what shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? How can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and also in whose hand the cup has been found. But he said, far be it for me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. That's 44, 16 and 17. As we go on in the story, Judah pleads with Joseph, recounting what he told Jacob. Joseph can no longer control himself, and he kicks everyone out of the room except his brothers. And he wept so loudly again that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer them, for they were dismayed at his presence. You think so? Genesis 45, 4 through 8, as we begin to close down this marvelous story. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near, and he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me. Here, listen, for God sent me before you to preserve life, for the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. Brothers and sisters, friends, those may be tuning in for the first time, do you have that perspective? That behind all of this, behind all the events in our lives, perhaps even our afflictions, that the good Lord is somehow behind it all in ways that I admittedly do not understand. And sometimes we have the benefit of being able to look back into our past and say, now I understand. Sometimes we don't. But Joseph got it. Imagine what had happened to him. Sold as a slave. Falsely accused with Potiphar's wife. Put in prison. Interprets the dreams of a couple fellas there, and they get out, and he says, please tell Pharaoh about me so I can get out of here, and they forget. But God esteems him. God lifts him up from the ash heap, puts his feet upon a rock, so to speak. wonderful. It's not just a story of Joseph's lives. It can be a story of all our lives if we can just but see and have the perspective that Joseph had. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. We get to what we might call the second reunion, where Joseph sends them to get Jacob and his household, and Jacob's spirit is revived. Let's read it, Genesis 45:25 through 46:4. So they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. And they told him, Joseph's still alive, and he's ruler over the land of Egypt. And his heart became numb, and he did not believe them. But when they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. I bet it did. And Israel said, isn't it interesting? Called Jacob, but now he's called Israel right after this when his spirit is revived. He says, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is alive. I will go see him before I die. So Israel took his journey with all that he had, and he came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. He said, here I am. Then he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go with you to Egypt, and I will bring you up again, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. So beautiful. So beautiful. And finally, let's look at God's sovereign plan in all of this. And this is where we lead up to what I've called this video 50-20 vision. How is it that Jacob will be brought up again out of Egypt, but that Joseph's hand shall close his eyes when Joseph is in Egypt? We're reminded of the promise made to Abraham that he would bless many nations and peoples, more than the stars in the sky, that there would be one who would come, the promised seed or offspring. I'm guessing that these thoughts, along with the sheer joy of seeing Joseph again, made this the shortest trip ever for Jacob. Interestingly, Jacob sent Judah ahead of him to show the way to Joseph and where they would be staying. Judah seems to be the leader now. And if you know your Bible, that may not be surprising, as the promised offspring just mentioned comes through his line. Again, have you ever heard Jesus referred to as the Lion of the tribe of Judah? And there's another really interesting thing that happens in regards to Judah. Jacob will enjoy 17 more years of life in Egypt than he had 17 years with Joseph before his brothers sold him. And now he gets 17 more with him. But Jacob gets old, and just before he dies, he will give all his children a blessing. By the way, aren't you happy that we don't bless people anymore by sticking our hand under their thigh? Ew. But he will include Joseph's two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, essentially adopting them into his family and blessing them as well. According to custom, Reuben, the oldest son, should receive more for his blessing, but he does not. Again, a theme that we've seen over and over. In fact, other than Joseph's blessing, the best is saved for Judah, who is actually the fourth in the birth order. And this shows that once again, God's sovereignty prevails. God chooses Judah to be the one through whom Jesus, the good shepherd, will come. There's something else to look at in this blessing. Stay with me. Judah. This is 49, Genesis 49, 8 and 9. Judah, your brother shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down. He crouched as a lion and as a lioness. Who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet. Pardon me. And as we wind down, the entire family is now reunited, about 70 people in all. Israel, the name given by God to Jacob, starts with one man and his extended family, but will still become a nation of many, many people. They are shepherds, taking care of their livestock and of pharaohs, but one day will be led by another shepherd from Egypt back to the promised land. In between, an awful lot will take place. including a new Pharaoh who will not know Joseph and who becomes very concerned about how fast the Hebrew population is growing. But that's a story for another time, like starting with the next video to be more specific. But there's one thing we must not miss that really captures the heart of this story. After Jacob dies, Joseph's brothers are concerned, understandably. They wonder if now that their father is dead, now Joseph will finally have his revenge on them. Let's pick up the text in chapter 50, verse 15. So important. When Joseph's brothers saw their father was dead, they said, "It may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil we did to him." So they sent a message to Joseph saying, "Your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you. And now, please forgive the transgression of your servants, of the God of your father." Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, "Behold, we are your servants." Again, they're petrified. He's now going to take his vengeance because his father is gone, because it would have broken his heart. Listen to Joseph's response. But Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for I am in the place of God." You see, he realized behind all the scenes, even his affliction was God, and he realized also that he could not take the place of God in meting out judgment. Oh, is there a lesson for us in there? Do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. Genesis 50, verse 20, 50-20 vision. Amazing. We're just about done. Behind the scenes of every twist and turn in this epic story is God's good plan to have Joseph end up in Egypt to save the lives of the very ones who sent them there and countless others. Remember, Joseph is a type of Christ. Another Savior would come someday, also mistreated, misunderstood, forgotten, and betrayed by the very ones who should have loved him. And there was just a wee bit of jealousy involved there too, the scriptures tell us. He would not only save in an earthly sense, meeting people's physical needs, like Joseph did through the famine, but he would save people from their sins, the ultimate salvation also of people who did not and do not deserve it, including you and including me. God's grace is so amazing that not only in sending his son did Jesus save us, but also by choosing sinners like Jacob, Judah, his brothers, like you and like me. And let me just pull up this amazing verse one more time. "As for you," Joseph said to his brothers, "you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today." I hope you can see why I love this story of Joseph and the redemption therein so much. So much. So Joseph points to Jesus in so many ways, but there's a lot of ground to cover between Joseph and Jesus. And the next character we meet, beginning in the next video, is perhaps the most famous person who has ever lived besides Jesus. His name is Moses. Pastor Joel saying bye